Hello students, welcome to KENE'S Educare, a group of KENE solutions. This is part 5 of lesson tissues. So as you all know, in part 4 we have already completed with respect to plant tissue, right? We have studied all the important points, we have studied what exactly was been taught about plant tissue, right? So before I start with the animal tissue today, as this part is going to be with respect to animal tissue, right? So before we start with animal tissue, I want each one of you to please tell me about plant tissue in detail. Um, So we have two types of plant tissue that we have studied, right? One is meristematic tissue and the other one is permanent tissue, right? And we know that meristematic tissues are also called as the dividing tissues of the cell, right? So after that, after discussing meristematic tissue in detail, we discussed on the other type of tissue that we have, that is the permanent tissue. Now permanent tissue are of two types. One is simple permanent tissue and the other one that we have is complex permanent tissue, right? So we have discussed those two types of permanent tissue in detail as well. So I just want each one of you to please revise whatever we have studied so far in the lesson, whatever notes you have taken in your book with respect to tissues from part 1 till part 4. I want each one of you to please revise it quickly. I hope everyone is revising whatever notes you have taken in your book. So we have started discussing, like we have started this lesson by discussing on what is tissue, because we have only two things over here. One is like you should be knowing what is tissue, you should be knowing about the plant tissues in detail, and lastly you should be knowing about the animal tissues in detail. So that's what you should be knowing of, right? So before we start with we start the revision, we started learning about plant tissue. We have discussed on what are tissues exactly, right? So I just want you all to go through the slide, and even you should be knowing how to draw the structure of tissue if it has been asked. Okay. After this, we discussed on whether plants and animals are they made up of same type of tissues or they are different, right? So here we have some of the noticeable differences which have been given on this slide as well as on the next slide, right? I hope everyone is going through this slide as well. So after this, here also we have some of the important point, like the difference between the plant tissue and the animal tissue. Okay, so I just want you all to please go through this as well quickly. I hope every one of you are going through the slide as well. After this, we discussed on the plant tissue, and the first tissue that we have discussed is meristematic tissue. So we have even discussed on different types of meristematic tissue based on the location where they are present. So they are of three types. We have apical meristem, we have lateral meristem, and we have intercalary meristem, right? So these are the three types of meristematic tissue based on the location. So I want each one of you to please go through this slide as well, and whenever you write about meristematic tissue, make sure you are drawing the figure 6.2 as well. Okay. After this, we discussed on this activity 6.1. So I want each one of you to please go through this activity. Going through this activity means you have to tell yourself like what will be the observation when you do it, what is the explanation that you will give, and what will be the conclusion for this. Okay. I hope every one of you are able to explain the observation. Like you should be knowing what will be your observation, how will you explain it, and what will be the conclusion that you can come up with after performing the experiment, right? Because we have already discussed it all before. After this, we discussed on permanent tissue. So while you write about permanent tissue, make sure you're drawing this diagram and you're writing what is differentiation, whatever has been given, and then whatever explanation and activities that we have further. If it's a brief answer, you will have to write it. Okay. After this, we discussed on this activity 6.2. So I just want each one of you to please go through it quickly. You have to even like know the section of the stem along with proper labeling for it. Okay. You can get a question as like they will give you the diagram and they will like let you label it properly. Okay, so make sure you know it. Like I'm making you aware that this type of questions you can also get in exam. So you should be prepared for that as well. You're also like I hope you all are trying to explain the observation, explanation and conclusion on your own. Like what exactly will be your observation when you perform this experiment. Though you're not performing it, we have done like we are studied it the same way, like what will be the observation, explanation and conclusion for it, right? Then we discussed on simple permanent tissue, and after discussing about simple permanent tissue, we discussed on complex permanent tissue. But here, simple permanent tissue is of many types. Like if it has chlorophyll present in it, it will be chlorenchyma. Okay, if it has large air cavities present in it, it is going to be arenchyma. Then we studied about collenchyma, sclerenchyma, and parenchyma as well, right? So before I proceed with all those parts, the revision on those parts, I want you all to please go through this slide quickly. After this, here we have parenchyma, sclerenchyma, collenchyma to discuss in detail. So I just want you all to please go through it quickly. I hope everyone is going through each and every part. And one of the objective question can be asked as dash tissue has dead cell, like dash cells of the tissue are dead. So you should be knowing that it is sclerenchyma, right? Sclerenchyma's tissue, they are dead. So here we have the function of sclerenchyma, parenchyma, collenchyma, everything which has been given, right? So I hope every one of you are going through it. Then we discussed on this activity 6.3. So here also I want you all to like make sure that you know the observation, explanation and the conclusion for this activity as it's important, okay? So here we have few of the points which have been given. So I just want you all to please go through it quickly. Even you need to know to draw like how you can draw the guard cell and the epidermal cell and how they will look like under the microscope, because that is what the activity is, right? You are going to observe this epidermal cell and guard cells under the microscope. So how exactly they are going to look like, you should be drawing it as well. And here we have most important thing, the transpiration definition and like information on epidermal cells, stomata which has been given. So this is also an important part with respect to plant cell, okay? So please go through this as well. After this, we discussed on this protective tissues. So here also we have all the important information. I want you all to please be quick with it and study it quickly. I hope everyone is going through it, and you should be knowing what is suberin. Suberin is a substance which is found inside the cell wall, that makes them impervious to gases and water. Otherwise, they are not. Okay. And even you have to go through the diagram of the Koch cells and the ruptured epidermis that you can see. After this, we discussed on complex permanent tissue as well. So I just want you all to please go through it quickly, everyone. And you have to even practice the diagrams which have been given. Diagrams are very important. I hope everyone is even going through the diagram. So here we have information on xylem and phloem, which has been given, like the different parts of xylem and phloem have been mentioned over here. I want you all to please go through it quickly. After this, now we are going to start with animal tissue in detail. So see, now you know the four types of animal tissue: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue, right? So we are going to discuss all of them in detail, right? So see what they have given over here. When we breathe, we can actually feel the movement of our chest, right? So what I want you to do is, everyone keep your like hands on your chest and feel the movement when you're breathing, right? And you will feel the movement. I hope everyone is taking it. So how do this body part move? So the answer to this is, you are able to move your body part because we have some specialized cells which are present in our body, and these specialized cells are called muscle cells. What are they called? They're called as muscle cells. So whenever there's going to be contraction and relaxation of this cell, it is going to result in movement. So the movement of your body or any part of your body is possible. It is only because of the muscle cells present in your body. Okay. So during breathing, what happens? When you breathe, you are taking in oxygen and you're giving out carbon dioxide, right? But the question is, the oxygen that you're taking in, where does this oxygen go? So you know that your lungs are absorbing those oxygen and it is transporting it to all the body cells through blood, because our body cells, each and every cell of our body, it requires this oxygen. Now the question again is, why is this oxygen required by our cell? Because for producing energy, right? Suppose you are eating food. Now whatever food you have eaten is going to get broken down, and like you're going to get energy out of it, right? So for breaking that food that you are eating, we need oxygen. If there is no oxygen, the food that you're eating will not get broken down, okay, and you will not get energy, and that is the reason oxygen has been needed by the cell. So the function of mitochondria we studied earlier provides a clue to the question, right? We know what is the function of mitochondria. Mitochondria का function, mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? So mitochondria is going to produce ATP, that is the energy. ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so blood flows and carries various substances from one part of the body to other. What will the blood do? Blood is going to flow in our body and is going to provide us with various substances from one part of the body to the another. For example, blood carries oxygen and food to all the cell. This is one of the function of the blood. Then it also collects waste from all the parts of the body and carries them to the liver and kidney for disposal. Okay, the sentences are very clear. I don't think so I have to explain this to you all, right? Then blood and muscles are both examples of tissue which are found in our body. What is this blood and tissues are? Blood and muscles, not tissue. Blood and muscles are examples of tissue which are found in our body, and on the basis of the function they perform, we can think of different types of animal tissue. Okay, so each and every cell is performing different function. They have a specialized function to perform. So for that we have different type of animal tissues, which includes like epithelial tissue, then we have connective tissue, we have muscular tissue, and lastly we have nervous tissue. So these are the four types of tissues which are present in the animal, which are present in animals, and we are going to study about each of the tissue in detail. We'll be studying about the functions of it, the groups into which they are classified further, and everything. Okay, so blood is a type of connective tissue and muscles form muscular tissue. So these are the two types of tissue that you're aware of, right? But before I move on to the next slide, I want each one of you to please write all the important points from this slide. I hope everyone is writing all the important point from the screen. I hope everyone is writing all the important points that you find on screen. After this, now we have epithelial tissue to discuss in detail. So see, the covering or protective tissue in the animal body are epithelial tissue. Now I want every one of you to see your hand. Now the layer that you can see just below the layer of your skin, you have one tissue which is protecting your body, and that tissue is known as epithelial tissue. Okay, so epithelium covers most organs and cavities within the body, and it also acts as a barrier to keep different body systems separate. Okay, barrier means it is going to prevent all the body system from coming together. So it is going to act as a barrier so that all the body systems of our body are separate. Then the skin, the lining of the mouth, the lining of the blood vessel, lung alveoli, kidney tubules, they are all made up of epithelial tissue. So when it comes to giving an example of epithelial tissue, you can write the skin, lining of your mouth, lining of your blood vessels, lung alveoli, kidney tubules. These are all examples. Okay, and know this, that epithelial tissue cells are tightly packed and they form a continuous sheet where they have only a small amount of cementing material between them, and there is no intercellular space present in between. Okay, there is no intercellular space present in the epithelial tissue, and they have small amount of cementing material present between each of them. And obviously anything entering or leaving the body must cross at least one layer of epithelium, and as a result the permeability of the cell of various epithelia, it plays a very important role in regulating the exchange of material between the body and the external environment. Now you know there are many, you can say, microbes which are entering your body, right? And even many of them are leaving your body. So while they are doing so, while they are entering it or leaving it, they have to at least cross one epithelial layer, and as and when the permeability of the cell will increase, then at that situation epithelium is going to play a very important role for exchanging this material between the body and the surrounding. Okay, and regardless of the type, all epithelium is usually separated from underlying tissue by an extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Now you should be knowing that all the epithelium, they are separated from the tissue with the help of this extracellular fibrous basement membrane. Okay, so different epithelia show differing structures that correlate with their unique function. So different epithelias are going to have different structure, and they are going to correlate themselves with unique function. Now when it comes to an example, so in cells lining blood vessels or lung alveoli, where transportation of substances occur through a selectively permeable membrane, there is a simple flat kind of skin. Now selectively permeable surface includes the plasma membrane, which is also called as the cell membrane, right? So whenever there will be transportation of substance which is going to take place through any of the selectively permeable surface, we are going to find out a simple flat kind of skin which will be present. Okay, so simple squamous epithelial cells, they are extremely thin and flat and form a delicate lining. What kind of epithelial cells form a delicate lining? It's simple squamous epithelial cells. They are going to form this thin and flat. They're going to be thin and flat, and they're going to form a delicate lining. Okay, so before I move on with the next part, or next you can say functions of epithelial tissue, I want each one of you to please go through it, go through it and write all the important points from this slide in your book. Then after this, see, we have the esophagus and the lining of the mouth. They are covered by squamous epithelium. Now, if you can see the four different types of epithelial tissues which have been given, we have squamous epithelial tissue, we have stratified squamous epithelial tissue, we have cuboidal tissue, and lastly we have columnar tissue. Okay, so when it comes to esophagus and the lining of the mouth, they are also covered with squamous epithelium. And when it comes to skin, skin protects the body, and skin is also made up of squamous epithelium. What is skin made up of? It is made up of squamous epithelium again. So skin epithelial cells are arranged in many layers so that they can prevent the wear and tear of the skin, and because they are arranged in this pattern of layers, we call it as stratified squamous epithelium. Can you see the second structure of the epithelial tissue? So because they are present in a pattern of layer, we call it as stratified squamous epithelium. Okay, so where absorption and secretion occur, as in the inner lining of the intestine, tall epithelial cells are present, and there is a columnar, meaning like pillar like epithelial, which facilitates the movement across the epithelial bar. If you can see the third tissue over there, because it is pillar like, we call it as columnar epithelium, the fourth one, not the third one. Okay, so columnar epithelium is going to help in movement across the epithelial barrier, and this is present in the respiratory tract. So in the respiratory tract, the columnar epithelial tissue, they have cilia. Now cilias, always remember that cilias are hair-like projections which are present on the outer surface of the epithelial cell. Okay, so this cilia can move, and their movement, because they are able to move, they are going to push the mucus forward to clear it. Okay, then this type of epithelium is the ciliated columnar epithelium. Ciliated columnar means they are column-like, and they are ciliated means they have hair-like projections on them. So lastly we have cuboidal epithelium. Now cuboidal epithelium forms the lining of the kidney tubule and the duct of the salivary gland, which is going to provide a mechanical support. Okay, and along with that they also acquire some additional specialization as gland cells, because these gland cells, they can secrete substances at the epithelial surface. Okay, and sometimes a portion of the epithelial tissue folds inward and a multicellular gland has been formed. What will happen? A portion of epithelial tissue will fold inward, and that is how a multicellular gland will be formed, and this is called as glandular epithelium. What do we know it as? Glandular epithelium. So I'll mark it how many types of epithelium we have. You have to write it in your book. So one that we have is squamous epithelium. Then we have stratified squamous epithelium. Then we have ciliated epithelium as well, right? Ciliated columnar epithelium. Then we have cuboidal epithelium, and lastly we have glandular epithelium. So there are 5 different types of epithelium which have been given. I want each one of you to please go through it quickly. I hope everyone is writing each and every information. After this, now we have connective tissue to discuss, which I'm going to continue that in the next part, but I hope you're clear with the animal tissue, whatever we discussed, and you are even clear with the epithelial tissue, whatever we have discussed so far. Okay, so now after like we will discuss connective tissue in detail in the next class, where you'll be studying most of the functions of the connective tissue. Okay, and after that we'll study this activity 6.4, then we'll discuss on muscular tissue in detail. Okay. Okay, so we'll discuss about muscular tissue in detail. Then we'll discuss on this activity 6.5, where we'll be discussing on different types of muscular tissues that we have. And after that, the last type of tissue that we need to discuss is nervous tissue. Okay, so we'll discuss about nervous tissue as well. And then we will have this summary discussion in detail, like whatever we have discussed till now in the lesson, we'll be discussing in like in short about it. Okay, after having this summary discussion, we have 15 questions, exercise questions to discuss. So I just want each one of you to please go through it quickly. I hope everyone is going through the question. So after discussing this 15 questions, at the end we will be like ending up with the lesson fundamental unit of life. And I hope whatever we discussed about animal tissue and about the epithelial tissue, about the different types of epithelium, you all are very much clear with it. Now in the next class I'll be starting with connective tissue and muscular tissue. Then like I need more two more parts I guess, and we will be completing up with this lesson tissues. Okay, so I hope every one of you have understood whatever we have studied till now. Okay, so I'll end the session over here and I'll be continuing in the next part. Thank you everyone.